A recent article from Jon Morosi has revealed that the New York Yankees have a massive decision to make in free agency. Now, we know Juan Soto is the main target, but what happens if the Yankees don't get him? That's the question Jon Morosi answered in a recent article that we're going to be discussing, because the Yankees are going to have a lot to think about going forward with whatever happens to Juan Soto. And I'm going to be talking about all of this here, what the options are, and what Jon Morosi said the Yankees need to do if this is not the case here in this video. Now, before we get into it, we know 70% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. If you're looking for a spot to get all of your New York Yankees news, you're in the right spot. Hit the sub button. Join us here on the channel. We have a very busy free agency ahead of us, and you're not going to want to miss a beat from the New York Yankees, and we'll have it all here for you guys, so make sure to hit that sub button. But Jon Morosi has made the Yankees have an impossible decision, really, looking at it. Now, I'm going to start this off, first of all, saying that it is no doubt that every team in the MLB wants their crack at Juan Soto, and that every MLB team possible will have their attempt at Juan Soto, but we know that the Yankees are definitely a team that are in the top 3 favorited for him, but we know there are a lot of other teams pushing and need a guy like Juan Soto, if not more or the same amount as the Yankees. So it's not going to be an easy feat to re-sign him, but what happens, just say, if he does not? Jon Morosi kind of answers that question here with this. He says, if you imagine the Yankees not signing Juan Soto, then perhaps they pivot into a combination of Antony Santander, Christian Walker, and maybe Willy Adames. Now, these 3 players right here are some of the top free agency targets, of course, outside of Juan Soto, outside of, at this point, Roki Sasaki, who we will touch on a bit later, but looking at what Jon Morosi has to say here, he really alludes that trying to get all 3 of these guys, if not 3, definitely 2. And going back into what we're looking at, what Jon Morosi is kind of saying here, and the idea of bringing in 3 of these guys, which are essentially kind of rebuild the New York Yankees starting 11, this is something that we want to discuss here, and something certainly to think about. So I'm going to pull up the 3, go over them, why or if not they're a fit for the Yankees. And first of all, we're going to start off here with Antony Santander. Now, Santander, we know a lot, very, very familiar with him from the Orioles. Pretty consistent career, I think is a good way of putting it, to say the least. A 246 over his career. Last year, a bit down on the 235, but he's a 44 home run guy. And, you know, the Yankees don't need more power, but if you were to replace right field with Juan Soto being there, obviously Antony Santander is a prime opportunity, a prime player that you would just replace Juan Soto with. Now, obviously, he's not going to live up to it. Much older at 30 years old, just turning 30 years old, but still is a guy that would absolutely fill that gap that you're missing for Juan Soto in right field. And essentially, if you trade Juan Soto out for Antony Santander 1 for 1, really wouldn't be the one that you're kind of looking at. That's not the ideal scenario, and that's not the ideal replacement, but as far as it goes from getting a guy like Juan Soto to maybe going to Antony Santander, you can't complain about that. But if that's the only move, then that's a point where the Yankees can definitely get some hate for it on that side of things, I guess. But overall, Antony Santander, a power bat, can play in the field, switch hitter, what's not to say about him that could absolutely fill in a Yankees hole. So keep in mind, Antony Santander, I would say, is a replacement in right field for Juan Soto, as he still is playing there for the Baltimore Orioles, or was for the Baltimore Orioles at a specific time. But moving on to the next guy, and these all 3 are going to be listed players from Jon Morosi and the ones he put in that quote there in the article. And second of all is Christian Walker, and a guy from Arizona, kind of the different aspect of seeing these guys as far as it goes. We don't normally see the Arizona Diamondbacks. So Christian Walker, though, very, very good. Very, very good on the field, good with the bat, 3-time Gold Glover. And in last season, especially at 251, very in the path of his career average. Not a quick guy, but once again, another very consistent bat, 26 home runs. A first baseman, I think, is the big thing here that we kind of want to touch on. The Yankees' first base is going to be now open with Anthony Rizzo gone, likely. And, there's a few other options that we can discuss. A few players that may not have a primary spot there. Judge's name has been thrown around going to first, which I don't think is going to be the greatest idea personally. Still very young, or younger, young enough to play in the field. So I think first base is probably a later option. We've seen Bryce Harper transition to that first base role, but that was also due to injury and whatnot to his shoulder and try and come back early. And that's not really the spot the Yankees are in right now. So I don't think Judge to first base is an option. But Christian Walker, one of, if not the best first base out there available, with a few limitations, of course, and for what you're looking for. But a 3-time Gold Glover with consistent hitting, and the player that he is, 33 years old, going on 34, a bit of an older player, but still very good, and it seems to be only getting better by age. So I think Christian Walker should certainly be an option. for the Yankees. However, on a certainly lighter term than what it would be for many other players than that you could go with. As well as the first baseman, you probably may want to go a bit younger, but if they choose to go Christian Walker for a year or two, I don't think that's a horrible option, as he's still hitting very consistently. But moving on to the third, if not one of the most popular players in free agency along with Juan Soto, is Willy Adames. And looking at Willy Adames, 251 batting average, the exact same as Christian Walker. Shortstop, third base, second base, can play the entire left side of the infield as well as second base. He's a very, very interesting player that the Yankees certainly could be looking at. We've discussed Nolan Arenado here. I think the unanimous kind of decision was that he's definitely too old. We don't want to see him kind of be a hindrance to the New York Yankees left side, especially with the development they have. But Willy Adames, at the age of 22, still very, very young, still a very well-developed player for his age. I think that this is likely the option they would go with for the left side of the infield, whether that is third base, whether that's second base and leave Jazz on third. The Yankees have so many opportunities for their infield that I think they're going to explore every opportunity that they can get over the next couple weeks, months going into free agency. And as free agency is open now, there are going to be a lot of players that are going to have to be kept an eye on, especially with the Yankees being one of these big spenders. But now, of course, this all depends on Juan Soto, whether or not he stays with this team, whether or not he goes elsewhere. The Yankees are going to have to take a look at these three players once again from Jon Morosi and really just go from there and see what they want to do, how they're going to break it down, how they're going to analyze what they've seen with or with not the absence of Juan Soto. So keep that in mind as we go over those players, as we kind of go deeper into this over the coming days. And of course, as well, don't forget that they don't need all three of these players. And obviously, all three could be certainly an option, but the Yankees could choose to go out of their way and go for someone else other than Christian Walker, trying to go someone younger. They choose Willy Adames and then maybe go Santander or whatnot. There's an infinite combination of players that they can choose between these three, as well as some other players that may not be kind of the top of the list, but the Yankees see a lot of potential. And so those are the decisions. And obviously, it's not an easy one. You would obviously love to have Juan Soto, but you can never really determine right now at what point or where he is in his contract negotiations with other teams. You can probably have a hint or kind of lean one way, but you're not going to know until we actually see some breaking news come out. So I think the Yankees need to at least engage in some of these conversations, whether it is or all three, one of them, two of them, or whatnot, just to have that extra step forward ahead of many other teams. But as I mentioned, there's also another guy who is probably a crazy option if we do end up having an absence of Juan Soto on this team that may not help them in the field, but would certainly help them on the mound. And that comes out from a recent report, which is a very interesting one that happened a few moments ago. We've discussed it briefly here on the channel. And of course, well, looking at the depth chart here right now, not what we're looking for, of course, but from Mark Feinsad, the Chiba Lotte Mariners announced that they will post right-handed pitcher Roki Sasaki, who immediately becomes one of the top free agents available in the MLB clubs this winter. So Roki Sasaki has been posted by the Marines, sorry, not the Mariners, by the Marines, and this is obviously, as you see Mark say here, he's shooting up the board to one of the top free agents in the MLB available right now. As I mentioned, we discussed him here briefly before. He would be a great option, but he's going to cost a load of money, and the Yankees are probably not favorites just because of the Dodgers having Ohtani, having Yamamoto. Having those guys is definitely going to be a big boost for having Roki Sasaki potentially going to the Dodgers, which absolutely sucks, of course, but the Yankees also have to determine whether they want to go after a big pitcher like this. We know there's Corbin Burns, and we know there's Fried. There's so many other players that the Yankees could go and choose, but having Roki Sasaki, 21 years old, coming out, already throwing 102, nasty stuff, playing against MLB-level talent in the World Baseball Classic, they know what he's made of. They know what he can do, and of course, if Juan Soto don't come back to the Yankees, those three guys choose to go elsewhere, the Yankees are going to have some money to spend, and potentially on Roki Sasaki. So let me know what you think about that. Do you think that we may see Roki Sasaki in a Yankees uniform, or do you think it's more likely that we see the guys that Jon Morosi said in Christian Walker, Antony Santander, and Willy Adames? Or, finally, do you want Juan Soto back here? And of course, I know the answer to that, but realistically, we have to take a big, interesting step to see if the Yankees are going to get him or not. So a lot of news here. Be sure to hit the sub button, though, if you do want to get more. That's all I got for this video. We got a lot of news coming down, as I mentioned. Free agency is well underway. A lot of people and a lot of names are starting to go out there for just about every team. You won't want to miss a beat of what we have, but like I said, that's all I got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button. I'm signing out. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.